Hey guys, welcome back to Lola Speaks. I'm so glad you guys could join me again today. I've missed you since the last episode. The last episode we touched on how not everyone is your past, meaning, treating relationships or new relationships with grace, giving people grace and letting people giving people time to show you their true intentions and just, letting time reveal all things and how our discernment can definitely make the final decisions for us and, allowing people grace over time. I hope that that episode kind of shed some light on how dating can be changed and not how so societal norms have made dating become. Because if we stick to what society says dating should be or how society says dating should look like, we would never have a loving, caring, kind, growing, spiritual dating life or monogamous relationship the way people make dating or relationships feel and look like today. Yeah. So just to touch a little basis on the previous episode that I had. Today, I want to talk about healthy friendships and how healthy friendships also have boundaries. We don't have to over romanticize friendships. And I think that's where a lot of friendships fail because we over romanticize them. So I just want to have a conversation that I honestly don't think we have enough. We spend so much time talking about romantic relationships, how to date, how to communicate with a partner, how to recognize red flags in others, how to set boundaries with someone you're in love with. But today, I don't want to talk about dating. I want to talk about friendships because if I'm being honest, friendships can be just as complicated, just as emotional, just as heartbreaking, and just as rewarding. I've had friendships that felt like family. I've had friendships that carried me through some of the hardest seasons of my life. I've had friendships that made me laugh until my stomach hurt. I've had friendships that also ended. Friendships that changed, friendships that drifted apart, friendships where expectations were never communicated, but disappointment somehow still showed up. And the older I get, the more I realize friendship isn't just something that happens, it's something we have to nurture, we have to protect, we have to communicate through, we have to give grace in. And one of the biggest lessons I'm learning is this: healthy friendships have healthy boundaries, not walls, not distance, not coldness, boundaries. There's a difference because somewhere along the way, we've confused being available with being a good friend. We've confused saying yes all the time with loyalty. We've confused self sacrifice with love. And I think it's time we challenge that because your friends deserve honesty, and so do you. Like, I remember hearing someone say that expectations are premeditated resentments. And that sentence stays with me every day because how many friendships have been damaged over expectations that were never spoken out loud? We expected them to call, we expected them to check in, we expected them to know we're struggling, expected them to celebrate us the way we celebrate them, expected them to show up exactly how we would have shown up. And when they didn't, we became hurt. But did they fail us? Or did they fail expectations that they never knew existed? Because sometimes the people we love aren't trying to hurt us. They're simply loving us in the only way that they know how. I also think social media has made friendship look so unrealistic. We see groups of women taking trips together, matching pajamas, birthday surprises, daily FaceTimes, weekly brunches, matching tattoos, matching energy. And somewhere in the middle of all that, we start believing that's what friendship is supposed to look like, right? But what social media doesn't show you is the conversations, the misunderstandings, the grace that they give each other, the forgiveness, the scheduling conflicts, like the seasons where somebody is struggling, the moments where one friend has more capacity than the other one. Friendship isn't built on aesthetics, it's built on grace. And grace sometimes gets messy. One thing I've realized as I've gotten older is that every friendship doesn't need the same level of access. Everybody cannot have VIP access to your life. Some people are seasonal friends, some are work friends, some are gym friends, some are prayer partners, some become sisters, and all of those relationships are valuable. The problem starts when we expect every friendship to fulfill every role, and that's simply impossible. And it's unfair because no one person was designed to carry every emotional need that you have. That's not friendship, that's pressure. And pressure eventually breaks people. I think one of the healthiest questions we can ask ourselves is, what am I expecting from this friendship? Am I expecting daily communication, immediate responses, constant availability, someone to always agree with me, someone to always choose me first? Because if I never communicate those expectations, how can I hold someone accountable to something they never agreed to? Hmm? Can I tell you something I had to learn? Sometimes your friend isn't pulling away. Sometimes they're just tired. Sometimes they aren't ignoring you. They're trying to survive. Sometimes they aren't becoming a bad friend. They're becoming a busy parent. They're caring for aging parents. They're building a business. They're grieving. They're healing. They're overwhelmed. Life happens. And I always tell y'all, life be lifing. For real, for real. Immature friendships make room for life. Because one day you may be the friend who doesn't have much to give. And you're going to pray your people give you the same grace you once gave them. I think we romanticize the idea that friendship means always being available. But even Jesus wasn't always available. There were moments when crowds searched for him and he withdrew to pray. He rested, he stepped away, he spent time alone with the Father. If Jesus modeled healthy boundaries, why do we think boundaries make us bad friends? Sometimes the most loving thing you can say is, I love you. I just don't have the emotional capacity today. And that's okay because boundaries aren't rejection, they're honesty. And honesty is one of the greatest gifts you can give a friendship. You know what I've noticed also? As children, friendships was so easy. You want to be my friend? Yeah. And that was it. No expectations, no pressure, no complicated conversations, no overthinking, none of that stuff. None of it. But somewhere between childhood and adulthood, friendships became heavier. Now we're balancing careers, children, marriage, businesses, mental health, healing, bills, bills. Can you pay my bills? Girl, I want bills. Grief. purpose. Grief is ongoing, it's forever, it's never going away. And somehow we are still expecting our friendships to function like they did when we were 15 years old. Life has changed, so friendship has to mature too. One of the hardest lessons I've learned is that my friends are allowed to have seasons where they don't have much to give. And that doesn't automatically mean they love me any less. Think about your own life. Have you ever been so overwhelmed that responding to a text felt exhausting? Have you ever looked at your phone, saw the message, thought to yourself, I'll respond later? And then 3 days passed before you even realized it. Not because you didn't care, because your mind was carrying too much. Now imagine if someone interpreted that as you don't value our friendship. How heartbreaking would that be? Now I do this all the time. I will grab my phone, see that you text me. It's 555. It's 555. Anyways, I will grab my phone, see that you text me, and be like, noted, and put my phone down. There's so much in this mind of mine, so much that I go through on a day-to-day basis that I totally forget to text my friends back. And 2 days go by and they call and they be like, you never saw my message? And I'd be like, you know what? I absolutely saw it, but I totally forgot to text you back. Don't hold it against my heart. Please don't. Please don't hold it against my heart. My mind is just everywhere. And the grace that I give my friends, I absolutely expect the same grace in return. And I don't think I'm wrong for that because I extend grace so graciously, so graciously, so great. I extend grace so graciously. You know? Sometimes people aren't withholding love. They're running low on capacity. And I think we need to learn the difference between emotional capacity changes. Some days I have enough to pour into everybody. Other days I'm trying to pour into myself. And that doesn't make me selfish. It makes me human. It makes you human. It makes us human. I think one of the biggest lies we believed is that a good friend is always available, always answers, always shows up, always says yes, always has the right words, always has energy, always has time. But that's not friendship. That's perfection. We don't need no yes men. And perfection has never been the requirement for love. Grace has. I know I'm always preaching about grace. You got to give grace to get grace. You got to give grace to get grace. Like, have you ever been disappointed in a friendship, but never actually told them why? You just became quiet. You became distant. You started answering differently, stopped reaching out, started matching energy. Maybe even convince yourself if they cared, they know. Can I lovingly challenge that right there? Because healthy friendships don't survive on assumptions. They survive on communication. Sometimes we expect people to read chapters of a book we've never even opened. We expect them to know what hurts us, what triggers us, what we need without ever giving them the opportunity to learn us. And that's not fair. Communication isn't confrontation. Communication is an invitation. It's an invitation to understand one another better. And while we're here, let's talk about how we trying to keep score. Because I think keeping score quietly destroys a lot of friendship. I call her first. I always check on him. I supported her business. I drove across town. I remember Dave's birthday. I planned the trip. I. It's always what you did. It's always I did this. I did that. I did this. I did that. Oh my goodness. At some point, the friendship becomes a spreadsheet. And love starts looking like a transaction. But healthy friendship isn't 50-50 every single day. Sometimes it's 80-20. Sometimes it's 60-40. Sometimes one friend carries more because the other one is grieving. Sometimes the roles reverse. Healthy friendships understands seasons. It doesn't demand equal performance every day. It chooses compassion over calculation. Something else I've learned is that not every friend is meant to serve the same purpose. And that's okay. I have friends I laugh with, friends I pray with, friends I go to for business advice, friends who challenge me spiritually. I have friends who remind me to rest, friends who know every detail of my life, and friends I only talk to every few months. None of those friendships are less valuable. They're just different. I think we get hurt when we expect every friend to be everything. But God never designed one person to carry your entire emotional world. That's why community exists. That's why we need different people with different gifts, different personalities, different strengths. And when we stop expecting one person to be our whole village, we begin appreciating people for who they actually are, not who we wish they would become. I also think we need to normalize saying, I don't have it today, without guilt, without shame, without feeling like we're disappointing everybody. Because here's the truth, you cannot pour from a cup that constantly feels obligated. Eventually, you'll begin resenting the very people you love, not because they ask too much, but because you never told them you were empty. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can say is, I love you. I want to be present when we talk, but today I don't have the emotional capacity. Can we catch up this weekend? Do you know how beautiful that is? That's honesty. That's maturity. That's protecting the friendship instead of pretending that everything is okay. And I'm going to say something that might make some people uncomfortable, right? Your friends are not responsible for regulating your emotions. They're responsible for respecting you, loving you, being honest with you, showing up as best they can. But they cannot carry your healing for you. They cannot become your therapist. They cannot become your entire support system. They cannot become your source of identity. That's too much weight for any friendship because eventually people break under expectations they were never created to carry. One thing I admire about Jesus is that he loved people deeply without losing himself. He served, he listened, he healed, he loved, but he also withdrew. He rested, he prayed, he said no. He walked away from crowds. Even Jesus understood that constant availability was never the same thing as faithful love. So, why do we feel guilty for taking care of ourselves? Why do we apologize for resting? Why do we feel like boundaries make us bad friends? Maybe, just maybe, boundaries don't push healthy people away. Maybe they teach healthy people how to love us well. And if someone gets angry every time you establish a healthy boundary, maybe they benefited more from your lack of boundaries than they ever did from your friendship. I want you to think about that for a second because sometimes what we're calling loyalty is actually overextending ourselves. Sometimes what we're calling being a good friend is abandoning ourselves to keep everyone else comfortable. And eventually, that version of friendship becomes exhausting. Not because friendship is hard, but because we confuse love with self neglect. And God never asked us to disappear in order to love other people. He asks us to love our neighbors as ourselves. Notice he didn't say instead of ourselves, he said as ourselves, which means loving yourself isn't selfish, it's part of the command. So, before I end today's episode, I want to ask you something, not about your friends, though, about you. When was the last time you evaluated the kind of friend that you've become? Not the kind of friend you have, the kind of friend you are. Because it's easy to make a list of what everybody else needs to improve, right? It's harder to sit with ourselves. Like, am I easy to communicate with? Can my friends tell me the truth without me becoming defensive? Can they tell me they need space without me taking it personally? Can they say no without me questioning their loyalty? Can they disagree with me without worrying if I'm going to end the friendship? Because if the answer is no, maybe the issue isn't just boundaries, maybe it's emotional safety. Another thing I've learned is that healthy friendships aren't built because people never disappoint each other. They're built because both people are committed to working through disappointment with honesty. Conflict is normal. Misunderstandings are normal. Different personalities are normal. Different communication styles are normal. What's not healthy is pretending everything is okay until resentment becomes louder than the love. Some of us don't have communication problems. We have avoidance problems. We don't say what hurt us. We collect it. We don't ask questions. We assume. We don't clarify. We create stories. And before we know it, we've built an entire narrative around something that could have been solved with one honest conversation. How many friendships have ended over assumptions? How many tears could have been avoided if somebody simply asked, "Hey, when you said that, what did you mean?" Or, "I've noticed you've been distant lately. Is everything okay?" Instead of immediately deciding they don't care anymore. Sometimes people aren't pulling away, they're simply carrying something you know nothing about. And can we normalize apologizing? Not that fake apology, not "I'm sorry you feel that way." No, a real apology. "I hurt you. That wasn't my intention. Thank you for telling me. Help me understand how I can love you better." Do you know how healing that is? Because mature friendship isn't about always being right. It's about valuing the relationship more than your ego. I also want to speak to the people who are just simply tired, the ones who have always been the strong friend, the planner, the listener, the encourager, the one everybody calls, the one everybody leans on, the one everybody assumes is okay. I want you to hear me when I say this, okay? You are allowed to need people too. You are allowed to cry. You are allowed to say, "I don't have it today." You are allowed to ask for help. Strength doesn't mean silence. And if you've built friendships where you can never be honest about your own needs, those friendships deserve a conversation because you shouldn't have to perform wellness to keep people comfortable. I think one of the greatest gifts we can give our friends is the freedom to be human, to forget sometimes, to make mistakes, to get overwhelmed, to grow, to change, to evolve, because we're all evolving. The version of me 5 years ago isn't the version of me today. And I thank God for that. My friendships have had to evolve too. Some friendships became stronger, some became quieter, some became memories. And I don't think every friendship that ends is a failure. Sometimes people complete their assignment in your life. Sometimes seasons change. Sometimes distance doesn't mean disrespect. Sometimes love simply looks different than it used to. And that's okay. Not every friendship is supposed to last forever, but every healthy friendship should leave you better than it found you. One thing I never want to become is someone who expects grace but refuses to give it. Because Lord knows I've needed grace. I've forgotten birthdays. I've responded late. I've canceled plans. I've missed calls. I've been emotionally unavailable sometimes, not because I didn't love the people in my life. It's because I'm human. I'm human. And if I want people to understand me during those moments, I have to be willing to understand them too. That's what grace is. You know, the Bible tells us to bear one another's burdens, but it doesn't say become one another's burden. There's a difference. Helping someone carry a heavy season is so beautiful. Feeling responsible for someone's entire emotional well being is unhealthy. That's why boundaries matter, because boundaries protect relationships from becoming resentments. Boundaries keep generosity from becoming an obligation. Boundaries allow love to stay joyful. And as I was preparing for this episode, I kept asking God, what do you want people to walk away with? And I kept coming back to one word, and that's grace. Grace for your friends, grace for yourself, grace for the seasons that changed people, grace for the conversations that needed to happen, grace for misunderstandings, grace to admit when you've been wrong, grace to forgive, grace to communicate, grace to grow. Because friendships don't survive because two perfect people found each other. They survive because two imperfect people decided the relationship is worth protecting. So before I leave today, I want to challenge you to reach out to a friend, not because they owe you anything, not because you're keeping score, not because you're trying to prove something. Reach out simply because you love them. And if there's a conversation you've been avoiding, have it with kindness, with humility, with 100% honesty, because healthy communication builds healthy relationships. If you're the friend who's exhausted, I hope today gave you permission to breathe, to rest, to say no without guilt, to stop carrying responsibilities that don't belong to you, to understand that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. Doors that teach people how to enter your life respectfully. Doors that protect your peace. Doors that make healthy friendships sustainable. Because if love is going to last, it has to have room to breathe. So I'll leave y'all with this. Friendship isn't measured by how available you are. It's measured by how safe people feel when they're with you. Can they be honest? Can they be themselves? Can they tell you the truth? Can they celebrate? Can they grieve? Can they grow? And can they change without fearing they'll lose your love? Because that's the kind of friend I want to be. Not a perfect friend, a safe friend, a gracious one, an honest one, a friend who understands that love doesn't demand perfection. It makes room for humanity. So if you're listening today, love your friends well, communicate clearly, respect boundaries, give grace freely, protect your peace, and never forget the healthiest friendships aren't the ones where nobody ever says no. They're the ones where people can say no and still know they're deeply loved. Thank y'all for spending time with me. If this episode blessed you, send it to someone you love. Maybe it'll start a conversation you've both been needing to have, right? So until next time, take care of your heart, take care of your people, and remember, healthy friendships don't happen by accident. They happen on purpose. This is Lola Speaks. I really do hope that this message resonated with someone. And I hope that it opened your heart and your mind. And I hope that it allows you to give grace more graciously. I hope that you can love on the people that love on you and set healthy boundaries and allow your friends to be human beings. Stop setting expectations, unrealistic expectations, because not no human on this planet Earth needs to hold all of your emotions in their hands because they can't even regulate their own emotions all the time. Have those honest conversations, have those uncomfortable conversations with love, with grace, and most of all, with honesty. I love y'all to life. Peace. Until next time. Bye.